This is the Great Websites Are Made Before the First Line of Code is Written session, driving strategy with human-centered design. If I could ask someone to do me a favor at some point and get a picture so I can send it to my marketing director, because she gets mad if I do these things and we don't have photographic proof. Thank you. So who am I? I'm Chris O'Donnell with Promet Source. I built my first website on 12/31/1995. I decided it would be cool to have a website online in 95. And technically it was online in 95. It was more like 2 a.m. on January 1st before I figured out chmod 777 so that anybody else could see the website. Would not be the last time I spent 2 hours on Unix command either, probably. I turned that night playing with HTML into a job at a web design firm a few months later, and here we are way too many years later, and I'm still working in web design. In between, I sort of cycled through hosting, hardware. If you were a .com startup in DC back in 2000, I'm probably the person that sold you $2 million of some hardware that your site never actually needed. I came back to web dev in 2012 with an Easy Publish focused firm, which is an open source CMS based out of Europe that no one in the US has ever heard of, and ended up with a Drupal shop in 2014, and here I am. And I'm also a certified Drupal website builder. Promet Source. It is Promet, not Promet. It's actually named for Prometheus from Greek mythology, the Titan god of forethought and fire. And we are a Chicago-based but mostly remote Drupal-focused agency that's been around since 2004 and have been focused on Drupal since 2009. So we've been at it for a while. We work with everybody, higher ed, nonprofit, government, commercial clients. We're not real picky. All right, so who are you? Just by show of hands, who works for like a Drupal end user, university, corporate client, whatever, versus who works for an agency? All righty. Who's a developer? Who's more of a design person? Who's other, project manager, whatever, executive? All right, just curious who is here. Okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about driving strategy with human-centered design. Why is this important? Well, it's important because the world's best Agile process, the world's greatest project managers, the world's best automated QA processes can't help you if you never should have built the website in the first place. It's still going to be a failed project. And by spending time up front making sure we're building the right thing for the right people, we dramatically improve our odds of success at the other end of the project. So what does this mean? Basically what we're doing is we're doing human-centered design. Let's define design first. Design is simply making something new to solve a problem. That's pretty obvious. Human-centered design is making something new to solve a problem where we really tightly focus our efforts on understanding what the end users need and want at the conceptual stage before we, in the case of Drupal, even install DrupalCorn. This sounds obvious, but it's really not. Who flew here on commercial flight other than me? You guys all local. Okay, who flew recently on a commercial flight in coach? Did any part of that process, from the time you got to the airport, feel like they were thinking about the end users when they designed the whole system? Right? No. Who had to upgrade their license to the new secure ID recently? Right? I mean, they weren't thinking about people when they designed that at all. That process is so bad that your actual driver's license in Virginia is not valid ID to get your new license in Virginia. You have to show up with your passport. If you're a woman, you have to actually bring proof of your name change if you got married 25 years ago. I mean, it's just crazy. They didn't think about the people that were going to have to go through the process at all. So you would think this stuff is obvious, but the reality is it's time, and time is money. A lot of times people just skip it, but we shouldn't. So why do we do it? In sort of the narrow building a Drupal website context, we do it for a couple of reasons. As an agency, it really helps us get better client engagement from day one. The process literally starts with us, and you've probably all been through this, either internal groups or working with your agency partners. You're in a room with a bunch of whiteboards, anywhere from 5 to 20 people, depending on the size of the project, all working together from day one. In our case, it's usually 2 to 5 days, depending on how complicated the project is. So that's everybody working together a lot from day one, everybody getting involved. In a big organization, like a government agency or a university setting, it also gets all the stakeholders involved really early. Because the finance department might have like a relatively minor concern about the website, but if you don't address that concern up front, they can cause problems 4 months in after you think your IA and design's done, and then they raise their hand and complain about something. So by getting all the stakeholders in the organization involved from day one, you kind of get them on board from day one, and that kind of negates those issues that might come up later down. And then also, just from an agency standpoint, we learn so much more when we can kind of do this intense deep dive on stuff in the very first days of the project. And all that knowledge obviously transfers to better projects down the road. So kind of more tactically, it reduces risk. If we know that, if we're in a higher ed site and we know that, we're focusing the site on, incoming students, we're trying to basically recruitment site, and we know these are these top 5 concerns, and we built the website thinking about those top 5 concerns from day one, it should be a better website. It should work better. We should get more admissions, from that. We should get more tours signed up or whatever the KPIs we're looking at. If you're kind of from day one thinking about who you're building for. When you reduce risk, you reduce cost, kind of obvious. Tame complexity. If you think about the classic 2006 era government website where there was a link, 150 links on the homepage to every department in the county or city or whatever, that comes from not thinking about your users. Right, because if you're the user going to pay your utility bill, you don't want to think about, do I click on finance, do I click on the bursar, do I click on public utilities, right? You want to see something that says pay your utility bill. But it took us 10, 12 years of doing government websites to actually get to where they look that way. Because at first you were trying to decode their org chart to figure out where to go. And then, as I hinted to earlier, this whole process promotes collaboration. Because from day one, you're working together on a whiteboard, sticky notes, whatever the case may be, trying to figure things out. And we're actually going to do some hands-on stuff later on. You're not going to just have to listen to me talk the whole time. So, all right. So, practical matter, what is this? It's really a series of workshops or activities. There's like 50 or 60 sort of defined workshops in the official human-centered design process that you can do. We're going to look at 3 of them today, so there's like a lot more here that you can do. And what we're trying to do is identify the stakeholders for the website, trying to prioritize those stakeholders, because the reality is, although we always want to say every user is equal, if you're the University of Iowa, the incoming freshman with a 1580 SAT score is a little more equal than certain other people coming into the website. Trying to identify our existing strengths, our existing problems on the site so we can address them, and where the opportunities are to improve what we already have. Then we're going to look at those things we just figured out, and we're going to group them so that we can work with them in a little better context. Then we're going to figure out some solutions to these problems we just identified, and then we're going to prioritize the solutions. And we're going to do all that in a client setting, usually between like 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. the first day. And here we're going to do it between 10 a.m. and 10:40 a.m. So why does this work? It forces us to think about the user. It forces us to look at the website, look at the product, look at the CD and coach, from the person that's going to have to use it. It also allows us then to validate the assumptions that we've been making about our users all along. Because oftentimes what happens in this process, we find out we were wrong about things that we believed. And then that allows us to actually create a solution which is laser focused on solving these problems we've identified. So what does this look like? So generally, day one, 9 a.m., Monday morning, we all meet at the client's office or whatever. And the first thing we're going to do is stakeholder mapping. For the developers in the room, stakeholder map is essentially a network diagram of your users. The one here is actually the one that we made at DrupalCorn in Seattle, where we were doing an exercise in our booth on Drupal 8 as a sort of corporate CMS. And we had people just come up and basically tell us who the stakeholders were for their websites or in general. And it's basically a brainstorming exercise. There are no wrong answers. So you just kind of get the group in the room and you start brainstorming. Who are our users? If you're the University of Iowa, right? It's incoming potential students. It's their parents. It's alumni. It's the community around the college campus. But realistically, the primary one here is going to be the incoming student. That's why the university exists. That's what the funding comes from to keep it going. So you're going to lay all this out, and then you're going to group them. In this case, looking at a corporate, Drupal 8 instance, we basically came up with 2 groups: the external users, the customers, the partners, etc., And also, and actually the bigger group, if you kind of look at the size there in the green lines, it's the internal users. It's the content editors. It's all the internal people that have to use the Drupal site on the back end, or maybe even using it from the front end if it's the intranet environment. So we don't want to forget about them either. Obviously, if you have a great looking website that's hard to update, you kind of haven't won the game. So once we kind of get through stakeholder mapping, and this is generally 45-minute process, it's pretty quick. Then we go into user personas. Who's familiar with the concept of user personas from doing this stuff, right? So what we're going to do then is we're going to take our, in the case I'm picking Iowa again, we're going to take our incoming freshman and we're going to call him Mike, right? And we're going to give him attributes. He probably lives in Iowa, right? He probably went to a public high school. Probably had a pretty good SAT score. He's probably not paying or writing a check, for the entire cost of tuition, so forth and so on, which is going to look different than, say, the Mike at a junior college, right? Because the Mike at a junior college, even though it's still an incoming freshman, that person more likely to be 25 years old, maybe already have a kid, working full time, trying to finish the degree up that they didn't finish back when they were 19. And that person is going to have very different priorities about what they're looking for from a college and what you're going to show them on the website. Right? I mean, for Iowa, it's something like flexibility in scheduling your classes. If you're an incoming freshman at Big State U, that doesn't enter your mind. You're gonna organize your life around your class schedule. But if you're a 25-year-old single parent trying to finish their degree, that's flipped, right? The ability to organize your schedule around your life becomes way more important than just about anything else. Otherwise, you can't get the degree. Those are the kind of things that you have to think about when you start to think about who your users are. Because even though it's still incoming freshmen at a college site, that's two very different use cases and two very different things you're going to want to focus on from a content standpoint, user journey standpoint, all of that. We don't necessarily do personas for every single user we identify in stakeholder mapping. The reality is that would just take all the time. So usually you're going to pick the top 4, 5, 6, depends on the website, and the application. But you're going to pick on the key ones, the ones that you really, really care about coming. Alumni in a college site, there's usually a separate alumni site. So for the main sort of student-focused website, you're probably not super worried about building it to keep the alumni happy. They've got their alumni website already, or you're trying to get them to donate or whatever. So the personas are kind of focused on the key people, not so much every single user, because that would just get tedious. So then we go into something we call the rose, thorn, bud exercise, and we're actually going to do this as a group here in a few minutes. And it's basically, if you think about what we did on that first slide, we were looking at our users as groups, right? We're looking at incoming freshmen, trying to define them as this one guy named Mike. Now we're starting to drill down into specific problems with the website. So the rose, thorn, bud exercise is literally in a client situation where we've got a big whiteboard, you've got 3 stacks of sticky notes, pink for the roses, green or something like green for the buds, and then some other color for the thorns, maybe brown or blue or whatever we get our hands on. And everybody just starts brainstorming what things are good about our current website or current product, if you're doing this in a product situation. What things are bad, what are the thorns? And then the buds are what could we do better? It's either not there, it should be, so it's an opportunity to improve things. Or it can be a thorn that you just need to do better. There's an overlap between the thorns and the buds sometimes. But it's simply a brainstorming exercise where people just take sticky notes, start writing out ideas, and walking up and just sticking them on the whiteboard. This works really well for a couple of reasons. First of all, you gather a lot of data in 10 minutes. And when you do this for 10 minutes, and you could easily have 50, 60, 70, 80 sticky notes that identify positives, negatives, and opportunities about your website. And also, everybody's equal when you do it this way. If you're in a room and you rate, and I say, hey, what do you think about the website? And the first person to speak up is the VP of marketing, it's going to kill the conversation. Because the junior marketing analyst who thinks differently isn't going to say a word. Whereas in this case, everyone's sticky notes are basically equal. So everybody can express their ideas, and you don't kind of get that problem again in group communications with the person in power sort of leading where things are going to go. So after we kind of get our sticky notes up, you then go into affinity clustering, where our creative director will come in and look at it and have this amazing ability to look at a whiteboard full of 100 sticky notes that just confuses me. She go, oh yeah, just starts moving them around and putting them into clusters of related or organized issues. The one we see here is actually a representation of our affinity clustering from DrupalCorn with the Drupal as a corporate CMS. And I was actually surprised by this, because you see, back end has got, 4 or 5 roses and a whole bunch of thorns, whereas front end is mostly roses. And before that, I would have guessed that was flipped. I would have thought, especially the DrupalCorn audience, would have been happier with the back end of Drupal 8 than the front end. I thought that was just kind of wild that turned out totally different than I thought. So you kind of do this same thing with the sticky notes in your environment. Kind of just whiteboard them and move them around and draw circles and break them down into 3, 4, 5-ish groupings. You don't want to get 2 more than that, because then you get too many groups to deal with and the overlap becomes a problem. So after that then, we've gone from the first stage where you're looking at big picture users and stuff, and now we've identified a bunch of problems. Now we're going to solve them. So the statement starter exercise is simply, we have this problem identified. Our website's not responsive. Let's say that's one of the thorns on our website. So the statement starter is, we can make our website responsive by. The point of these things is they're not yes/no questions. You got to keep them open-ended. So if we decided that one of the big ones from the previous slide that we need to work on is our website's not responsive, how can we make our website responsive? We can make our website responsive by X. And you do the same thing with sticky notes. So everyone's writing down, okay, how can we make the website responsive? Retheme it, right, or something like that. So again, you kind of go through the same exercise you went through with Rosebud Thorn, with sticky notes, where people just brainstorm how to fix the various problems, and you just collect them on the whiteboard again, group under each problem. And once that's done, we then go to kind of the final step of this process, which is the matrix for importance or difficulty, where then as a group, you decide which problems go in which category. And unlike Acquia and their Gartner group, matrix thing, the top corner is not actually where you want to be in this one. You want to be down here, because the axis is on this thing. The y-axis is basically difficulty or cost of fixing the problem, dollars. And the the horizontal axis is importance. So the bottom corner here is the stuff that's important and relatively cheap. That's your target. That's the stuff you're gonna focus on immediately. So the top corner, the magic quadrant in Gartner, is what we call strategic. It's the important stuff that's expensive. So oftentimes those are big projects that you got to get a VP to sign off on. You got a budget for next year. So those frequently end up being phase 2 kind of things you're going to do in the future, because oftentimes they're out of scope for the current project. The bottom corner there, the low-hanging fruit, it's cheap stuff to fix, but not particularly important. Doesn't really matter in the big picture. So you could probably just sweep those up as part of the project. And then the luxury box, quite frankly, are the problems or the features you're not going to do, because they're expensive and not very important. So from a standpoint of what we've just done when working with clients here, we've gone from 9 in the morning debating who our users are, and at 3 p.m. we've got backlog 1.0 for the project, in a certain sense, because we now identified the problems that are most important to fix. It's really amazing how quickly this process can take a room full of 20 people, and oftentimes in a corporate setting don't actually work together very often, because you got the web team and you got the finance people and the HR person and all that, and how quickly you can kind of get them to work together, come to a consensus on a complicated problem like how do we fix our website. Now we're going to do it. Okay, so you want to go to tinyurl.com/DrupalCorn on your laptop or phone. Pull it up here. There we go. It should look like this. We've got 3 virtual columns. Red are roses. The middle column is your thorns, and then the buds are green. And the problem I thought we would attack, I was trying to keep it general, it worked for everybody, is Drupal 8 as a digital experience platform. So not just Drupal 8 as a website CMS, but in the bigger picture, Drupal 8 is sort of the base for your digital experience platform. It's integrating everything else in your organization. Kind of thing Acquia talks about all the time. Pantheon does too now, Agile marketing stuff. So if everybody can, we'll just take a couple minutes here, say 3 minutes or so, and just brainstorm. Click the little plus to create sticky notes. And try to at least get 1 in each column if you can, or, if you're a naturally half-glass full kind of person, you can put them all in the rose category. I guess it doesn't really matter. helpful too. All right, one more minute. All right, awesome. Okay, now go back. You can see the little thumbs up icon where you can vote. And vote for your favorite or the most relevant or however you want to think about it. You know, it'll vote 2 or 3 times if there's 2 or 3 that are important to you. All right, great. So let's look at what we did here. We all agree that flexibility and the fact that accessibility is sort of baked in, that it's mobile friendly out of the box, and that it's open source are all roses. I don't think we'll have the argument there. Thorns, ugly, confusing admin interfaces, steep learning curve for newcomers. The next one's also a big learning curve, so really that's the same thing. Content authoring experience outdated, also kind of the same thing. Yep, how to choose modules. And then some of the buds, some of the opportunities. Building a basic website's more complex than it needs to be. Ability to publish as JSON. Awesome, okay. We'll go back to the presentation for a minute. Okay. Do that, all right. All right, unique cluster, that's where I got to go to next. All right, so we think about how we could group these. Clearly, the back-end admin authoring experience would be a cluster. Kind of the flexibility, open source-ness of Drupal would probably be a cluster, mostly built on good. Anybody else see any clusters they want to call out? Integration comes up 2 to 3 times across the categories. The ability to integrate both good and that Drupal integrates with everything, and not so good and that because it integrates with anything, it can be complex versus, say a proprietary software where they connect with their own 5 pieces of software, so at least it's easy, given all the negatives that go along with that. Okay. Statement starters. All right. So let's pick the big one, the authoring experience, the back-end interface. What can we do to fix that? We being you personally, we being a Drupal community, how do we want to look at it? We could. Somebody help me out here. If we were like this was our corporate project, we could build a better admin theme. Right? That would help. Maybe it's bigger than that. Maybe we need to rethink the whole back-end experience and do the whole user-centered design process to figure out what you should really be providing to people there instead of assuming it's kind of the same thing with Drupal 7 as with Drupal 6 and so forth. But that really hasn't changed a whole lot over the years. What about, let's pick on the integration one too. What could we do to make integration better in Drupal?
We could resource what we really need to integrate.
Right, true. One idea I've had is there could be like, I don't want to call them premium, but there could be like sort of certified integration modules. Like if you're integrating with Salesforce, this one's like battle tested, have the times to put into it, maybe supported by Salesforce.com or whatever. This one will really work, which also addresses one of the issues there about picking modules. Right? So there could be like I hate to put up modules in tiers, but there could be sort of premium modules, not from a pay standpoint, but just from these are good. We know they're good, they're used. Versus what we do now, which is look at how many installs, right? They have and try to guess from that and guess from the issue queue if it's going to be worth even trying. Yeah, so those are a couple things we could do. All right, percent. All right, where would we put? Fixing the back end. Where would you put that? Which box? Don't make me play teacher and call on somebody. Yeah, I'd say it's strategic. It's not going to be easy. I mean, it's important, but it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a big project. Yeah. Absolutely. The integration stuff, same thing, right? It's a big project. We're not going to do that one, in a couple of sprints. Let's just try to think of some things we could do in the other boxes. Target. What's a couple of targets for Drupal, that things we should do that are really pretty cheap and easy, and you kind of wonder why we haven't already done it?
The back-end operating experience could be there, but I could also see that going into luxury as well, just based on how much you're trying to improve the operating experience for the backend.
Yeah, and maybe authoring doesn't even need to be in. I mean, why not decouple the backend, the authoring experience, and build a really rich interface that, just use the APIs to pump the content over to Drupal. That's another option. So I think you kind of see how this process would work, like in an internal team working on a website or an agency going in with a client. Now, this is most of day one, most of our usual client projects, these basic exercises. And you kind of make a lot of progress. And also from the agency standpoint, the fact that at the end of day one, the clients, after just hiring us, is looking at, wow, the progress you made, and the same in the internal project, right? Any resistance to it starts to fade when after one day of working, you walk out with kind of a target list of things that the website needs. So here's the question: does it work in real life? Here's the thing: this whole process is designed to help us fail. Because if we're going to fail, we want to fail when we're working with Post-it notes, not when we've already gone through 4 development sprints, right? This guy, software engineer, states that it's 10 times as much to fix a software system once you're into development, and it's 100 times as expensive to fix it once you're into production versus doing it, at the prototype or sticky note stage. And the whole point of this process is to get everybody talking up front so that we can decide at the sticky note stage, no, trying to fix a back-end experience is big expensive project, we can't tackle it this year. Instead of getting 3 months into it and then deciding we can't tackle it this year, right? That would be an expensive mistake. And here's the thing: even after you do all this, we haven't actually validated any of this. We haven't done any user interviews. We haven't done any usability testing on prototypes yet to see if we're actually right. Might want to go back and talk to the stakeholders in a little more depth than you could, like in the 1-hour group session, to really drill down on some of their concerns and needs. And you got to build some prototypes to figure out, to test our assumptions that we made as a group and make sure that we're actually on the right path. Again, before we start committing stuff to code. So, a couple of case studies. Lehigh University. We worked with them last year. That's actually a picture of their board, so they're pretty well organized there. The biggest issue that came with them was that they were struggling because their web IT team and their marketing comms people didn't even have a shared vocabulary for the website. If somebody said header or footer, that meant something different in the marketing department than it did to the web team, which made it real hard for them to have conversations and fix things. So one of the things that actually came out of this was we kind of built them and made sure everybody had the kind of same understanding of Drupal 8 and how it works, so they could have these conversations and not have them go awry just because they're talking kind of past each other because they're not talking about the same thing. MindBody. Anybody ever use the MindBody app to schedule yoga classes or martial arts or whatever? It's a commercial company that their business model is basically they're like an ERP for yoga studios, karate studios, that kind of thing. And they got a free app. As the parent or the yoga student, you download to schedule classes and that sort of thing. They had a D7 site. We helped them take it to D8. And the big challenge is when they did this kind of stuff with D7, they came up with 7 stakeholder groups. But the big challenge with their website was that consumers trying to find help with the app would end up in content meant for their paying customers, and their paying customers trying to figure out something about an invoice would end up in content meant for consumers about the app. User journeys were just non-existent in the D7 site in terms of getting people to the right place. So you go to mindbodyonline.com now, and literally it's like an old school: are you a consumer or are you a customer? To make sure you're funnelling people into the right content, because that was kind of the biggest problem. And then those were big corporate website projects. This one's I just want to use it as a last example because it's different. This was a project we did last year with the American Library Association that had to launch, if I remember correctly, 46 days from the first time we signed the contract. So there was really no time for us to fly into the office and do a 3-day big discovery session, because that was going to be some point the project done. And they had something going on with Google where it had to launch by whatever date, under threat of death. So we kind of did just like we did here with that app, and did kind of a 1 day with them to get the stuff down so we could jump right into development and get the site launched on time. So this doesn't, it's definitely applicable to big, heavy redesign, Agile.edu type projects, But it's also applicable to kind of more of a smaller Agile project where you're maybe only going to have like 2 development sprints and you're done. So, takeaways. Human-centered design is a process that can be learned. I can't draw a stick figure. Design terrifies me, but I understand this. This makes sense to me. If you think about it, it's kind of a methodology for running effective meetings. But that forces us to continue to make sure we're designing for our users and not for ourselves. It lowers the risk, lowers the cost, results in better websites or better products. We talked about earlier, it drives client engagement, collaboration, all that stuff. And it's kind of fun. You're going to be stuck in a whiteboard room all day with a group of 20. There's probably much worse ways you could spend it than doing these exercises and actually getting stuff accomplished. Questions? Yes.
So, maybe you show us with this tool. Is it hard? I know you work remotely, right? You work remotely? Or just
Yes.
team? So, is that process harder or not? Is it different?
I think it's better when you're all in the same room. Because you just, the conversations kind of flow a little smoother. But it does, we've done it remote now a few times for clients, just for various, whether timing or, if the client's remote, they've got people in 6 cities and they don't want to fly everybody to the same place. So we've done it remote that way too, where it was like a more formal 3-day process, but the whole thing was remote. And it actually works pretty well, but it does require the person running the meeting, be good at running meetings. Because as you know, in your remote meetings, you get off track. I think up here you have a question.
Yeah, the rose, thorn, and bud process seems more geared toward improving an existing product, but the exercise we did here, we were talking about as a new product or whatever. How do you transition, for example, our list, our cards for rose, thorn, and bud, into, say, backlog items, which when we're more like, wow, the goal is this.
Right. That's kind of when you go to the matrix, because the matrix is basically telling you this is the target box is the stuff that's relatively cheap and important. So you're probably going to focus on that first. Those essentially are going to end up becoming user stories. We need to fix this, so as a content editor, I need the ability to essentially what was on the tag. And then the stuff in the luxury category, are basically user stories that you never do, probably. So who's got the money for luxury items, right? Any other questions? All right, thanks.
I have another one.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Your slide with Lehigh on it, I noticed that their matrix had kind of everything on the important side.
Yep.
I don't know if you remember that.
I was not personally in that session, so.
Okay. I just wondered if there's any strategies for getting people to really drill down and say, okay, everything's important, but.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that's what Mindy, our director of design, was on that. I'm sure that's basically what she did, was got them to okay, everything can't be important, right? Everything can't be critical. It's not realistic. But yeah, I wasn't actually in that one, so I don't know exactly how that went down. All right, I'm going to turn off the big red button.